From the moment I met his mom, I knew she didn't like me. She smiled. Sure, but it never reached her eyes. She hugged me, but stiffly, like it was required. Every compliment felt forced, every conversation polite but distant. My boyfriend Aaron always brushed it off. She's just protective, he'd say. You're her only son's first serious girlfriend. And for a while, I believed him. Maybe it was just me overthinking, maybe she'd warm up. But as the months went by, it didn't get better. It got worse. She'd make little comments at dinner. Oh, you don't know how to cook that? Your mom must not have taught you. Or, I hope you're not distracting Aaron from his studies too much. Once, when she thought I wasn't listening, I heard her whisper to Aaron, she's not like us. I never understood what she meant. I came from a perfectly normal family. Sure, we weren't rich like theirs, but my parents loved me, supported me, treated me like a person, not a problem. The real shift happened when I started spending more time at their house. The first strange thing was the photo wall. Their entire hallway was lined with family photos, vacations, birthdays, holidays. But none of them included Aaron before the age of 6. I thought maybe they just didn't like baby pictures, but something about the gap gnawed at me. When I asked Aaron, he shrugged. Guess they never took many when I was little. Odd, but not impossible. Then one weekend, while Aaron was out with his dad running errands, his mom asked if I'd help her clean out the basement. It's long overdue, she said, her voice tight. I agreed, hoping maybe she was trying to bond. The basement was cluttered, boxes stacked high, old furniture, broken appliances. We worked mostly in silence. After an hour, she told me to start sorting a pile of boxes near the furnace while she handled the opposite corner. As I opened one box, I noticed something strange. It was filled with photo albums, but every album had pages ripped out. Empty slots where photos should have been. Another box held loose pictures, many half-burned or torn. Some were so damaged I couldn't tell what they showed. I reached for one that was only partially burned and froze. It was a picture of a little boy, blonde hair, bright blue eyes, standing next to a woman I didn't recognize. But it wasn't the unfamiliar woman that shook me. It was the boy. He looked exactly like Aaron. Identical, but younger than any photo I'd ever seen of him. I flipped it over. Someone had written in faded ink, Aaron, age 3, with Marie. Marie? I'd never heard that name before. Aaron's mom's name was Diane. My hands started to shake. Before I could process it, Diane appeared behind me. Her voice was sharp. What are you doing? I quickly set the photo down. Just sorting like you asked. She grabbed the photo from the box, her face tight with something between anger and fear. These are trash, old duplicates, mistakes. She shoved the photo deep into a garbage bag. Focus on that side, please. I wanted to ask more, but her tone made it clear the conversation was over. The rest of the afternoon was tense. When Aaron got home, I didn't say anything. Not yet. But that night, I couldn't stop thinking about the photo. Who was Marie? Why were so many pictures missing or burned? And why did his mom look so scared when I found it? Over the next few days, I started looking for answers. I casually asked Aaron about his early childhood, but his memories were fuzzy. I don't remember much before kindergarten, he admitted. We moved a lot when I was little. I asked if he ever knew anyone named Marie. He frowned. No, should I? I shook my head. Just curious. But my curiosity only grew. I tried searching public records online, birth certificates, property records, anything that might give me a clue. And then I found something. A marriage license. Not for Diane and Aaron's dad, but for a woman named Marie Sanders and Richard Thomas, the man I knew as Aaron's father, dated a year before Aaron was born. My stomach dropped. The names matched too closely to ignore. I kept digging. Divorce records came next. Marie Sanders filed for divorce 3 years after Aaron was born. The documents mentioned custody disputes, but didn't go into details. And then, nothing. No death certificate, no remarriage, no trace of Marie after that. It was like she vanished. The next weekend, while Aaron was upstairs showering, I found my chance. Diane was in the kitchen. I approached her carefully. Who is Marie? I asked softly. Her face went white. Where did you hear that name? I saw it on a photo, and in the public records. She married Richard before you did. She's Aaron's biological mother, isn't she? She didn't answer, just stared at me with wide, panicked eyes. What happened to her? I pressed. She took a step closer, her voice low and shaking. You need to stop digging. Why? I whispered. Her voice broke. Because some things are better left buried. But it was too late for that. The truth was already clawing its way to the surface, and I wasn't stopping until I knew exactly what they had buried. After that night, everything changed. I couldn't look at Diane without hearing her words. Some things are better left buried. I couldn't look at Aaron without seeing the little boy in the photo who had no memory of Marie. I didn't tell him yet. I wasn't ready. I needed more, something concrete, something undeniable, because once I opened this door, I knew there was no closing it. The following week, I stayed late at school, using the library's public records archive. I searched everything tied to Marie Sanders. Most files were dead ends, But then I found a police report dated shortly after the divorce. It was heavily redacted, but one sentence stood out. Report filed regarding missing person, Marie Sanders, last seen leaving child custody hearing. My hands went cold. Missing. Not moved away, not relocated, missing. I cross-referenced the date with local news archives. One small article appeared. Local woman disappears under mysterious circumstances following contentious custody battle. No suspects, no leads, and no follow-up, like the town had just collectively decided to forget she existed. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, my mind spinning. Aaron's biological mother didn't leave. She vanished, and nobody seemed to care. But Diane cared. Enough to burn photos. Enough to try and keep me away from all of this. As I printed out the articles, I felt a presence behind me. I turned, half expecting Diane herself, but it was Miss Carter, one of the librarians. She gave me a curious look. Research project? I nodded. Family history, she smiled faintly. Dig deep enough, you'll always find something you weren't supposed to see. Her words sent a chill down my spine. That night, I went back to the house with my head spinning. Aaron was waiting for me, smiling, ready to watch movies like nothing was wrong. I sat there, trying to act normal, but the weight of what I knew pressed heavier with every passing second. Finally, I couldn't take it. I paused the movie. Can I ask you something? He looked confused but nodded. Have your parents ever talked to you about your mom? Your real mom? His face shifted immediately. Confusion, then discomfort, then something close to anger. What do you mean? My mom's right upstairs. I mean Marie. His eyes narrowed. Where did you hear that name? I hesitated, then told him about the records. The photo, the burned pictures, the missing persons report, everything. He sat in silence, gripping the edge of the couch, his knuckles turning white. I don't remember her, he whispered. I've never even seen a picture. They always told me Mom was... Mom. His voice cracked. They never mentioned anyone else. I placed my hand on his. I think they didn't want you to know. But you deserve to. He looked lost, like his entire foundation had been yanked out from under him. What do we do? He asked. We keep digging, I said. Together. The next step was clear. We needed to find out who handled the original missing persons case. The police station wasn't far. We went the next morning, pretending it was for a school project. Most of the clerks brushed us off, but one officer, Detective Hayes, seemed curious when I mentioned Marie's name. That's an old one, he said, rubbing his chin. Unsolved, barely touched. There wasn't much to go on. I asked if we could see the file. He hesitated, then lowered his voice. I shouldn't, but nobody cares about that case anymore. He led us to a back room, pulling a dusty box off a shelf. Inside were thin folders, interviews, search reports, notes. The pages were yellowed, brittle at the edges. Hayes let us look while he stayed by the door. Most of the reports said the same thing. Marie vanished after the custody hearing. No witnesses, no signs of foul play. One entry caught my eye, a neighbor's statement. I saw her arguing with a woman I didn't recognize the day before she disappeared. They were shouting. The woman had short blonde hair. I nudged Aaron, pointing at the line. Diane had short blonde hair back then, didn't she? His face went pale. Yeah. Another report mentioned a tip line call that came in weeks later. Anonymous, claiming Marie had left town to avoid trouble. No follow-up, no verification, nothing, a dead end. But it wasn't a dead end to me. It was a cover-up. As we left the station, Hayes pulled me aside. Off the record, he said quietly. Everyone always thought something wasn't right. But nobody wanted to cross Richard or Diane. Too much influence in town, too many favors. My stomach turned. This wasn't just a missing person. This was a secret everyone quietly agreed to keep buried. That night, Aaron and I sat in his room, piecing it all together. They fought for custody, I said. When she tried to get you, she disappeared right after. And Dad married Diane a year later, Aaron added. And suddenly I'm living with them, and no one talks about her again. He put his head in his hands. What if they did something to her? The thought hung in the air like smoke, choking both of us. Then Aaron said something that made my blood run cold. There's an old storage unit my dad rents. I've never been there. He never lets me. We looked at each other. We knew what we had to do next. The answers were waiting. And whatever Diane tried to burn, whatever they thought was gone, it wasn't finished. The next morning, we drove out to the storage unit. It was in the far corner of town, tucked behind an old industrial park, half hidden by trees that bent toward the gravel driveway like they were trying to block the entrance. The place looked like it hadn't been updated in decades. Rusted gates, peeling paint, rows of dented roll-up doors. Aaron's name wasn't on the lease, but his dad's was. The attendant barely glanced at us when Aaron flashed his dad's spare key card. Unit 23, right? The man said casually. Aaron nodded, forcing a calm he didn't feel. Yeah, just grabbing some stuff for my dad. As we walked down the narrow row of units, my heart pounded. Each step closer felt like walking toward a secret that was finally ready to surface. We reached Unit 23. Aaron slipped the key into the padlock. It clicked open with a metallic snap that echoed too loud in the quiet air. He hesitated, gripping the handle. "Ready?" he whispered. I nodded. The door rattled as he pulled it up. Inside, it smelled like old dust and mildew. Rows of cardboard boxes lined the metal walls, some labeled with Sharpie, others completely blank. An old rocking chair sat in the corner. A broken lamp, bins of holiday decorations. It looked harmless at first. We started opening boxes. The first few were full of old tax papers, receipts, random household junk. But then, near the back, we found a box simply labeled MISC. Aaron pulled back the flaps and we both froze. Inside were photo albums. Not the kind you put out for guests, the kind you hide. They were older than any we'd seen at the house. Baby photos of Aaron, his first steps, his first birthday. But what struck me wasn't the photos, it was the woman holding him. It wasn't Diane, it was Marie. Young, smiling, alive. Her hair was longer than in the police file, but the resemblance to Aaron was undeniable. I flipped through the pages, my stomach tightening. Birthdays, park trips, beach vacations, all before the age of 3. All erased from the family hallway at home. Tucked between the albums was a manila envelope. Inside were court documents, the original custody filings. I skimmed them quickly. Marie had been awarded temporary custody pending final review. The next scheduled hearing? The one she never made it to. Behind the papers was something worse, Polaroids. Dozens of them. Not posed family shots, but surveillance-style photos. Marie at the grocery store. Marie at work. Marie walking Aaron through the park. Some were taken from inside a car, through a window. They followed her, I whispered. Watched her. Aaron's face was pale, his hands shaking as he flipped through the photos. They knew where she was every day. Underneath the photos was a small black recorder, the old kind with cassette tapes. I turned it over. The tape was still inside. We looked at each other. I found an old extension cord and plugged the recorder into a nearby outlet on the wall. The machine clicked on with a low hum. The tape began to play. At first, just static, then voices. Marie's voice, quiet, scared. "You don't have to do this." Then Richard's voice, cold, controlled. "You're not taking him from me." "He's my son," Marie said, her voice breaking. "He's not safe with you." "Safe?" Richard laughed, sharp and bitter. "He'll be safe when you're out of the picture." A rustling sound followed. A scuffle, Marie crying out. Then a third voice entered, Diane. Calm, steady. "Richard." "Not here." Richard's voice again. "She brought this on herself." Marie's final words were barely audible. "Please, please don't." Then silence. The tape clicked off. Aaron staggered back like he'd been punched, his face drained of color. "They did it," he whispered. "They killed her." I shut the recorder off, my hands numb. We stood there in silence, the truth crashing over us like waves. Everything we feared was worse than we imagined. They hadn't just erased Marie, they'd hunted her, silenced her, replaced her. Aaron sank to the floor, head in his hands. I knelt beside him, trying to steady my voice. "We need to take this to the police. Now." He nodded, but I could see it. The pain, the betrayal, the grief starting to crack him open. As we gathered the evidence into a box, Aaron's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and froze. "It's my dad," he whispered. "He knows we're here." I grabbed his arm. "We need to go, right now." We rushed out, locking the unit behind us, adrenaline burning in my veins. As we pulled out of the driveway, another car turned onto the gravel road. It was Richard. His eyes locked onto us as we passed. For a moment, he didn't chase us, didn't honk, didn't move, just watched, his face calm, controlled, like he already had a plan. We drove straight to Detective Hayes, no detours, no stops. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. Aaron gripped the evidence box like his life depended on it. When we arrived, Hayes took one look at us and ushered us into his office, locking the door behind us. "What did you find?" he asked, voice low, serious now in a way it hadn't been before. We laid everything out, the photos, the custody papers, the surveillance shots, and finally, the recorder. Hayes listened to the tape in complete silence, his expression darkening with every word. When the tape clicked off, he exhaled slowly. "Jesus Christ." Aaron sat rigid, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles went white. "They planned it," he whispered. "My father and Diane, they murdered her." Hayes nodded grimly. "This changes everything." He called in 2 other officers, had them seal the evidence, made copies of the files, the recording, everything. He assured us, "This is enough to reopen the case officially. I'm assigning protection for both of you starting tonight." We spent the next few hours giving full statements. Every detail, every conversation, every piece of the puzzle we'd gathered over the past few weeks. By the time we finished, it was past midnight. Hayes put us up in a hotel under fake names. Officers were posted outside the door. For the first time, I thought we might finally be safe. But I was wrong, because the next morning, everything exploded. News broke before sunrise. Local businessman Richard Thomas and wife Diane Thomas under investigation for suspected involvement in 15-year-old cold case disappearance. Reporters swarmed the police station, the house, the school, everywhere. The town that once protected them now turned on them. But Richard didn't run. Instead, he called a press conference. We watched it on the hotel TV. He stood behind a podium, Diane at his side, both of them calm like they were hosting a charity event. "These accusations are completely false," he said smoothly. "Fabrications meant to smear our family's reputation." Diane nodded, her face perfectly composed. "We've always acted in the best interest of our son," she added. "Any suggestion otherwise is outrageous." Watching them was surreal, so cold, so calculated. Aaron stared at the screen like he didn't recognize them. "How can they lie so easily?" he whispered, but the tide was turning. Public opinion was shifting fast. As the investigation deepened, more pieces surfaced. Old neighbors came forward, former coworkers, even distant relatives who remembered Marie and how quickly she disappeared. Then Hayes called us back to the station. "We found something else," he said. He led us to the evidence room. On the table sat a small metal box, rusted and dented. "We recovered this from a property Richard quietly purchased right after Marie vanished. We believe it was a safe house." Inside the box were more surveillance photos, handwritten notes tracking Marie's daily movements, and worst of all, a bracelet. Small, delicate, with an M charm. Aaron recognized it immediately. "She wore it every day," he whispered, tears filling his eyes. Hayes' voice softened. "This bracelet was found buried near the property's back fence. There were signs of disturbed soil. We're running full forensic tests now." The implication was clear. They hadn't just made her disappear. They buried her. We left the station emotionally wrecked. I held Aaron's hand the whole ride back to the hotel, but his grip kept tightening and loosening like he was fighting waves inside his chest. "They took everything from me," he said quietly. "My mom, my childhood, my entire life." I squeezed his hand. "But you're taking it back now. You're stronger than they ever thought you'd be." That night we barely slept. I kept checking the door, expecting something, anything. And then, around 3 a.m., the phone in our room rang. Aaron answered it on instinct. Silence on the other end. Then Richard's voice, calm, quiet, dangerous. "You should have left it alone, son." Aaron didn't respond. His hand trembled as he hung up. We called Hayes immediately. Within minutes, officers were pounding on our door, searching the hallway, securing the exits. But Richard was already gone. Hayes stood in our room, furious. "This isn't just obstruction anymore. That calls direct intimidation. It helps us, but it also means they're getting desperate." The following morning, the forensic report came back. DNA tests confirmed that traces on the bracelet and soil matched Marie. Human remains were also found deeper in the burial site. It was her. They'd finally found her. Hayes made the arrest that same afternoon. We watched from the station as Richard and Diane were led out of their home in handcuffs. The same house where Aaron grew up. The same house built on lies. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. Richard didn't say a word. Diane glanced directly into the cameras, her face completely hollow, like someone who finally realized the walls had closed in for good. But even as they were loaded into the police car, I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over. Not yet, because Richard had one more move left, and we didn't see it coming. The trial date was set within weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. Surveillance photos, court documents, witness statements, the taped confession, the recovered remains, even the threatening phone call. Richard and Diane both pled not guilty. Their defense team tried everything, claiming the tape was fabricated, the evidence planted, even suggesting Marie had run off and someone else framed them. But nobody was buying it anymore. The town had seen too much. Too many lies had unraveled. Aaron and I attended every hearing. We sat side by side, front row, watching as his parents' empire collapsed piece by piece. Aaron testified, his voice strong even as it cracked. He talked about the missing photos, the storage unit, the threats. He told the jury how his entire childhood had been a carefully constructed lie. When they played the tape in court, the room went dead silent. Marie's voice filled the courtroom. Her pleas, her fear, Richard's threats, Diane's cold instructions. Some jurors looked sick, others looked furious, but none of them looked unsure. Then came the surprise. Richard finally broke, not during cross-examination, not under pressure from the prosecutors, but privately, in a last-ditch effort to save himself. He offered a partial confession in exchange for a reduced sentence, life imprisonment, instead of the death penalty. In his confession, he admitted to everything. The stalking, the custody battle, the fight that turned deadly. But what chilled us most was how methodical it all sounded. "It was the only way to protect my son," he said. "Marie was unstable. She would have destroyed him." When asked about Diane's involvement, he didn't hesitate. "She helped me cover it up. She knew what had to be done." Diane, for her part, refused to say anything. She sat stone-faced through the rest of the trial, as if silence could somehow erase her part in it all. But it couldn't. The jury deliberated for less than 2 days, guilty on all counts: murder, conspiracy, obstruction, tampering with evidence, child endangerment. Richard was sentenced to life without parole. Diane received the same. The day they were led away in cuffs for the last time, Aaron didn't cry. He didn't smile. He just sat there quietly, staring at the courtroom doors like he was waiting for his own brain to catch up with reality. When it was finally over, we visited Marie's grave together. The police had released her remains to Aaron once the case closed. She was buried beneath a willow tree on the quiet side of town, far from the house where everything started. Aaron placed a small bouquet on her grave, white lilies, her favorite. "I wish I remembered you," he whispered. "But I know you now, and I won't forget again." I squeezed his hand, my throat too tight to speak. Months passed. Aaron started therapy. Slowly, piece by piece, he began reclaiming his life. Not the one Richard built for him, but the one Marie fought for. He moved out of the house permanently, sold it through the state, donating the proceeds to local charities for victims of domestic violence. We found an apartment together in the next town over. Small, cozy, ours. Sometimes, the nightmares still came. The storage unit, the recorder, the weight of what was hidden for so long. But they became less frequent, less sharp. Healing came in waves, never in a straight line. The town eventually moved on. Reporters stopped calling. People stopped whispering. But the scars stayed. A reminder of how far the lies went and how close we came to never knowing the truth. One day, as we unpacked the last of our boxes in the new apartment, Aaron pulled out the only photo he kept from that storage unit. A photo of him as a baby, cradled in Marie's arms. She looked happy, whole, free. He placed it on our bookshelf, right next to a framed photo of us. "This," he said quietly, "is my real family now." I smiled through the lump in my throat. "And she'd be proud of you for fighting for the truth." Aaron nodded. "It's over now." And for the first time, I finally believed him.